Hi, and welcome back to my podcast about purpose-driven people. So on today's episode, I'm joined by Chris Tinsley, also known as the Wolfman. A little bit more about that later. He's a Kent-based fitness coach with over 20 years in the industry. He holds sports science degree, has a degree in teaching, has qualification in personal training, football coaching, rugby coaching, basketball, and is even a qualified archery instructor. He's currently running his own business called Wolfman Fitness out of Ashford. And his whole purpose is about helping others get a better understanding about the balance of their life. So he's not about telling people how to live their lives. It's more about coaching them about the opportunities they want. Very much on the same page with that. So welcome, Chris. It's great to have you on the show. And how are you feeling today?
Brilliant. Nice. It's good to be here. I'm just wowed by my own introduction. That was, I was thinking, who's this guy? I like the sound of him. I'm absolutely buzzing to be here, actually, mate.
Brilliant. It's good to have you with us. And as I said to you, this is about people with purpose. It's talking about stories, people that I admire, and hopefully we can share some of that and inspire other people. So that's what we're about today. So if you could just give us a little bit of an intro so that, our listeners can sort of find out a little bit about you. What's your journey? What's your backstory?
Well, it pretty much all started when I was back at school. I'd have been 16. I was 16. I was 16 by this point, and I took part in a qualification that at the time was called the Royal Sun Alliance Community Sports Leaders Award. It's now just called the Community Sports Leaders Award, or CSLA for short. But I think I was in the second cohort to ever take it. And basically, it was an introduction to coaching. So we, in a small group, there's about 12 of us that took this badge. We pretty much just spent a couple of hours a week going through sports, like games as much as anything, taking it in turns to lead each other through sessions, which we had to plan. So that was like my first introduction into working with others in I'm going to say a fitness capacity, but it was more game driven. Then when I was 18, so a couple of years later, my dad bought into a franchise of sports schools. Most people have heard of Stagecoach Theatre Arts. This was a breakaway branch of Stagecoach.
Oh, right.
And they ran exactly the same format, exactly the same concept, but it was all based on sport. He then had to employ a run of coaches, and obviously, allowed me to come along for the journey.
Gotcha.
And it was an amazingly well paid. It was only a weekend job, but an amazingly well paid weekend job. But I was then working with people who, a bit like I am now, had been doing similar things for years and years and years, and I just got this unique opportunity to learn from them. But what we discovered quite quickly was that they were learning from me as well a little bit, which was unexpected, but it just showed that I was a bit, I hate using the term, but I was kind of a natural to it. And it was the engagement, I think, was the thing. I thrive, and I learned it very early on. I thrive on engagement with other people. So we did this sports school for a few years, and you mentioned in your intro with a smile about the archery instruction. Well, the funny thing about that was we needed an archery cut. It was the unique selling point of the sports school, was they supplied us as a franchise with thousands of pounds of archery equipment. You can charge about £150 an hour as a going rate,
wow,
if not more, and that's for one-on-one tuition. So group sessions, you're talking hundreds of pounds. So my dad, being the shrewd businessman he is, quickly realised it was cheaper to send me on a course to learn how to do it than it was to employ a coach. And that stayed with me ever since. The years that I've spent out in fields doing group sessions and things, it's just amazing. From there, I went off to university. And whilst I was there studying, I call it a sports science degree. I did a bit of a mishmash in the end because I couldn't quite settle. I didn't really know where I was going at this point. Still don't, to be fair, but I didn't know where I was going at this point. I was playing football for a local team in London, and I got picked up randomly by a scout to have a trial over at Fulham.
Wow.
I went over, and it didn't go quite how I anticipated. I found myself on the coaching employ rather than on the playing roster within a couple of days, which was fine because I wasn't expecting it in the slightest. But then I ended up there, and they put me through my coaching badges for football. And then whilst I was studying my degree, they would send me to local schools for coaching sessions, and it was like football education, I suppose is the way to put it. It wasn't just playing football. It was using football as the medium to get children active. That was kind of the key thing. It wasn't just football. It was physical activity. So everything I was doing sort of kind of coincided and convalesced and just merged together. When I finished my degree, I wasn't really sure what to do. So I stayed at university and did a teaching degree because it kind of made sense to throw all of the things I'd been doing together. And then over the years, from that point onwards, I just went around doing various different things, worked for different companies and institutions and applied that trade. And then I got to late 20s and my mum, who'd been quite unwell actually for most of my life with various things. She'd been very unfortunate. We later found out it was lupus. It was put down as being chronic arthritis and rheumatoid arthritis through most of my youth. Not a lot of people really know much about it, but essentially it's just this horrible condition, lots of other complications. It's autoimmune based, so it's your body attacking itself. Anything that you can think of that your body can do to itself under lupus, at some point it will. And then things got worse. She then got diagnosed with cancer as well.
Oh man.
So she was in this horrible situation where the lupus drugs fed the cancer. So if she took the lupus drugs, the cancer would grow. But if she took the cancer drugs, the lupus would get worse because she couldn't take both. So we played this game. It's a horrible way of wording it, actually. It was just draining for everyone. Obviously, no one more so than my mum, but it was difficult and challenging on all of us. And I kind of threw myself into work, and it was quite nice for me because I didn't have the best of relationships with my mum before that. But being an adult at this point and things, we rebuilt bridges and towards the end became like the best of friends. But I hit 30 and she sadly passed away.
Sorry.
And I came off the rails. But yeah, I got myself into some very tricky situations. I had been married and that came to an end at the same time. I think it was all kind of related. And things just got very tricky. You know, in the space of 6 months, I pretty much went from owning my own house, you know, having an ill mother, but having a mother and being married, to not owning a house, no longer being married, not having my mum, and very much losing my way and not knowing what to do. And I rebelled quite significantly. I mean, you know, it's all tied up at the moment. People can't see my hair, but I've got this ridiculous long hair and this beard, which I've had for years. But the interesting thing that I sort of point out to people is a very sort of unknown fact for people that have met me later in life. At 30, despite the hair and the beard, didn't have a single tattoo, not one. I'm 36 now, so it's been 6 years. And at last count, I'm sitting at about 115 tattoos. That's all happened in that time. And that's very much become part of my journey and who I am now. But at the time when it started, it was all part of a larger rebellion. And I was working in an institution at the time that these sorts of things didn't sit well. They weren't allowed. They weren't okay. Another 6 months went past, and I found myself without employment as well. in a 12-month period, like I say, I'd lost my mum, got divorced, lost my house, and then lost my job. And I had no idea what to do. I very quickly found my feet and found another job. And then, unfortunately, when I say I rebelled a bit, I'd rebelled so much that something then caught up with me in the new job, and that ceased to be an avenue of employment and income for me. I started to build this sense, very much so then, of no matter what I did, it was always going to go wrong. And I got myself into a very negative mindset. I reluctantly sought help. I was sort of cornered into it by my family, and thankfully they did corner me into it. But we then got this diagnosis of having bipolar disorder, which, with everything that was going on, I mean, yes, it helped make sense of things, but it suddenly went to highlight how tricky the situation really was, because I was dealing with a lot of things and things that would be difficult for most people. I'm essentially emotionally unstable. So it kind of fueled the fire actually at this point in life. The only thing I had was the skill set that I'd acquired and developed. Oh God, I sound like I'm in Taken. The skill set I'd developed and acquired, you know, a unique set of skills that I've applied and worked on and things over years. So I kind of went into this situation of utilizing these skills. I ended up working rather bizarrely. I got a job in my local gym just for something to do. So I was working in there as general gym staff, but I found that I just sort of walked around talking to people and helping them, which I found amazing, and as did the members of my gym. The management hated it. It was not what I was supposed to be doing, apparently. But I ignored them. And I also did bar work. And I got into this habit where for about 18 months, I literally was working 18, 19 hours a day, because what was happening was the second I stopped working, the bad habits that I've kind of glossed over would then become an issue. If I wasn't asleep or working, I was in a bad way. And then things took a bit of a turn for the worse. My past caught up with me a bit more, and there'd been a misunderstanding, and again, we'll gloss over bits of this, but there'd been a misunderstanding, and from a professional point of view, I was in a difficult situation. From a legal viewpoint on this case, in this instance, it was fine, but from a professional point of view, I'd got myself into a spot of bother, and it became public knowledge, very much taken out of context, out of proportion, and turned into something it really, really wasn't, but done very publicly. And the problem was then my back was up against the wall, because there was this public perception of who I was.
Yeah.
The behaviours I'd been displaying through all of this difficult time kind of supported that, even though it wasn't actually true. And I hit this moment in time where it was like, right, I've got a diverging path here. I can keep treading the way I'm going, and it will be carnage, emotionally unstable. I've been through this traumatic ordeal. I'm putting everyone else through an equally traumatic ordeal with my behavior. I can basically become the person that people are suggesting I am, and things will only get worse. Or I can take this other path and see where it leads me, and try and build and try and patch things together. So I tried. I tried to take what for me is this left-hand path, and there were lots and lots of successes, but I could only see failures, and I was struggling. So I sort of sat down with my dad, and he said to me, he'd been saying to me for a long time, you need to get out of this town. Very old school, very Western. You need to just get out of this town. And I was reluctant, because despite not actually originally being from Kent and all the things, but it was what I knew. I took a leap of faith, and I went to Asia on an open-ended journey to work with orphaned children. And I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and it was not a well thought out plan. I mean, it was amazing, and you'd be pleased to know, spoiler alert, there was no bad in this story at all. But just to give you an idea of how unplanned it was, I arrived after a 21-hour journey or something, 22-hour journey. I hate flying. I'd never flown on my own in my life. I'd only ever been on planes with a partner or my family. And I was suddenly on this first stint was 18 hours, then a little stopover, and then like another 5 hours. It was horrendous. And I arrived looking the way I do, covered in tattoos, hair that goes pretty much down to my waist, bandana on, shorts and t-shirt and flip-flops, which they probably expected out there, to be fair. Got through the airport, stepped out into this heat that I cannot describe. I mean, I've been lucky enough to spend time in the Caribbean and south of the equator, and this was something else. This was like literally stepping into your oven. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where I was supposed to be going. I didn't know who was picking me up, and I couldn't speak a word of the language. So here I am. I'm sat there, and I don't know what to do. I had only American money, because that's what I was told to take, which made sense until you realise that the payphones only accepted the local currency. And that was the start of my journey. And then very quickly I sort of finished that bit off by going, I eventually, you'll be pleased to know, I managed to find someone that spoke some semblance of English, and they managed to call the agency I was working for, who told me there was a taxi coming for me. 5 hours it took for me outside this airport for me to get in this taxi. And then I got in this taxi, we'll call it, and the taxi driver didn't speak a word of English. I still didn't know where I was going. What I didn't appreciate was how far into the middle of nowhere I was going. So I landed in Phnom Penh, the capital city, and my base with the orphan children was 7 hours away. And Cambodia doesn't have roads, it has dirt tracks. So I fell asleep. I was jet lagged. I fell asleep in this taxi, and it was sunny when I fell asleep. And when I woke up, I was going down this rutted road, and it was pitch black. And I had that moment of, this is it. Like, I'm about to be murdered. Like, clearly I've made a mistake here. And that was my introduction to traveling. But yeah, like I say, it ended up being literally one of the most amazing experiences of my life. And I ended up spending about 2.5 months out there. We were trying to build, we were like a little commune. There was about 20 of us. We'd spend the mornings, helping with irrigation systems, helping just, I mean, it sounds very technical when I say it like that. It was digging a hole. And then in the afternoons, we'd teach the children English and games. I played games. I didn't really teach. I taught English through playing games. To get back on track, I came home and I'd found a purpose. I'd been through this horrific ordeal, and this is, at this point, we're talking sort of, it'd been going on for 3 years. In the midst of all of that, I'd got into another relationship, and it was probably the biggest mistake of everything I did. We all talk about abusive relationships and spousal abuse and all this, and it's always considered to be a man physically abusing a woman. But I actually found myself in the flip of being in a relationship where I was being emotionally abused by my female partner. So that had been going on as well. So I came back from Cambodia, and it was a fresh start. It was a clean slate. I went back to the gym very temporarily just to give me a bit of a breather, and spoke to the guys there, and I was like, right, I've got these qualifications. I'm already a qualified personal trainer. I really appreciate everything you've done for me and giving me the time and space to be here and for letting me travel and things. But I want to make my own business. I want to build from this. I want to build on what I've done, and I want to use what I've experienced and do something with it. And they were very good, and they let me be based out of their chain for a period of time. And I got into this, I call it like a development mode. So I carried on just being me, and I walked around and I spoke to people and I helped people with exercises, and then I tried to essentially tout for business.
Sure.
And I did that for about, I don't know, a year. I was getting increasingly frustrated because when I came back from Asia, from Cambodia, I had this real buzz about making a difference, doing something differently. And also I'd found me a little bit. I was more comfortable with who I was. And yet somehow in the sort of year that followed of trying to build this business that was based on that foundation, I'd lost myself a little bit again. So I had a bit of a redraft and a rethink, and like the business I'd built, I'd already acquired the moniker of Wolfman by this point. It's always been there. It's something that, I mean, I've been fascinated by wolves since I was about 3 years old. On a very quick tangent, I did some gardening for my dad, who lives about an hour away from me, yesterday, and he gave me a box of, I'm going to call it a box of crap, of my own belongings that he'd obviously found. But literally, I opened that up, and even in there were postcards of wolves that I must have got when I was like 5 years old, 6 years old. I mean, I've always been fascinated by them. That sort of fed into it for me. But then there's this whole fact that I'm covered in tattoos, have a beard and long hair, and quite white. I'm quite rangy. I'm not your stereotypical muscle-bound, ripped PT. I am quite springy and bouncy, and powerful is the correct term when you watch what I do. So it just kind of all fit together. So I had this persona I was building.
Sure.
But there was still something missing. So I set up I had a LinkedIn profile, but I tweaked it and started talking about charity-based work. I put the feelers out. I was determined to try and draw in some kind of charity into what I was doing, and discovered it was nigh on impossible for a plethora of reasons. And also, I hadn't really solidified what area I was interested in. Like, charity's a broad thing, there's a charity angle for everything. So at this moment in time, I was feeling lost again, and I wasn't quite slipping back into the depths of where I'd been, but I was running out of steam a little bit. It was like the train was on the tracks, but the coal chute was running low, and I was getting a bit slower. And I think my dad, bless him, had started to worry about this. And he had gone, I don't know what he was on. Like, that sounds dodgy. He'd gone on a course. He goes on lots of things in his line of work. And he was so annoying. He just would not leave me alone. He wanted to talk to me, which sounds lovely, but I was getting so frustrated with him because he wouldn't just talk to me on the phone. He needed to see me. He had something really exciting to tell me. And I was like, oh, for God's sake. So eventually we went and had coffee, and my relationship with my dad is probably very typical of most boys and their fathers. We're devoid of the ability to talk about emotions, and with everything that had gone on and everything we'd been through, and it was we, because obviously I'd lost he'd lost a wife, like we'd been through this together. We never spoke about it. We just couldn't, or not to any depth. I won't do him a disservice, but not to any depth. Then this bipolar thing, he really struggled with. He just could not get his head round. And he tried, again, like, please, because I know he'll watch this or listen to this, he tried, he still tries, but by his own admission, he just could not get his head round it. So he sat me down, he's like, right, I'm going to sort you out. Brilliant. Worst thing you can say to someone like me. I'm like, no, you bloody won't. Like, no one is sorting me out. Like, so what's my problem? What's my issue? Anyway, so it started like that. He goes, I've met this guy and I think he can really help you. And I was like, here we go. Like, this is going to be another therapist, counsellor. I'd been through so many at this point. I was like, oh. And he starts talking about this guy, or these two guys, Dan and Ephraim. And basically, on this thing he'd been on, these two gentlemen stood up and they gave a presentation, they gave a talk, and they explained their backgrounds and their stories. And they were setting up, or they'd set up, and at this point, I think it would be fair to call it an institution or an organisation, because they didn't have their charity status quite at this point, which is StrongMen. And he was like, he explained to me the concept as they'd explained to him. He gave me what he could remember of their backstories and how they'd come to this point in their lives and what they do. And he explained to me that, they set up essentially like a retreat over a weekend, and they get together specifically men who'd suffered a bereavement, but were not, it's horrible to say, but we're not coping. Like, in one way or another, we're not coping with that bereavement. And men being men, not accepting help or unwilling to admit they need help. And it was those kinds of things. And Dad thought very much that I fit in this mold. So on pain of death, I was told I had to make contact. So I did, and I didn't hear anything. And time went by, and Dad saw, because he'd signed up to the newsletter, and Dad saw that they'd been on a retreat, and he was like, well, did they not get back to you? And I was like, no. And he was like, well, that's very odd. They were very like adamant they would speak to everyone and blah, 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 blah. He said, you had nothing? I was like, no, been through my junk mail, been through this. So incised probably is the right word. My dad manages to track down poor Ephraim and sends him probably a very strongly worded email about how let down he felt. And out of nowhere, I get an email from Ephraim, who I'd never spoken to at this point, basically and very genuinely apologising. And it turned out that somehow in the transition period of because they were obviously as this thing was growing, it was getting more and more interest. The changeover of going from probably it was a free server to a slightly bigger paid email system, I'd got lost. And it's a perfectly legitimate thing. It happens. I mean, in my business, I deal with electronic communication all the time. So he was like, I'm so sorry. What I want to do is I don't want to talk over the phone, or I want to meet you. Ephraim and I arranged to meet, and we go and meet. And as you're probably gathering, I can talk. So about 4.5 hours passed. I'm sure he only had half an hour. I'd like to say we hit it off. And this was just over a year ago. And from that point on, he and I spoke more and more and communicated more and more. And I learned more about what he's doing. And we've definitely become friends. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. We've definitely become friends. But what that did, it was like I'd built a patio, because I'm doing that later. I'd built a patio, a paved like flagstone patio. But what I hadn't done was I'm going to say, I'll get killed for saying grouting, because it's not grout. It's called something else, isn't it, when it's a patio? But I'm going to say grout. I hadn't been able to do that. So my patio was disjointed and not connected. This chance meeting literally just brought it all together. I suddenly knew my direction. So for the past, I don't know, 14, 15 months, I've realigned my business. And now I'm still a personal trainer. That's still what I do. But I try and work specifically with people who have any kind of mental health issue. So my client base now has and includes other people with bipolar disorder, people with depression, people. I'm lucky enough from having spent a bit of time working in education to be able to utilize skills working with people with autism. So I've got a couple of clients, one who's autistic, one who's actually got Asperger's. But I'm in a position where I can take the skill set of a personal trainer and use those skills because I have those, but I can then mold that to the understanding that I've got on a personal level, emotional and mental and sometimes learning based issues, and reach people that you're normal. And I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but you're normal, down to earth, average PT that just loves exercise perhaps can't. From there, I've then branched out and reached out to my local volunteer centre to try and find more of these people. And with StrongMen, I try and offer my services there because I feel that it's almost like we're misaligned souls or something. You know, it's we've all got this connection, and it's born out of a tragedy with StrongMen, but it's something that is unique to all of us. And everybody, unfortunately, in life will suffer bereavement. And everybody will have to deal with that. But I know from my dad as an example, some of us are just hardwired to be able to cope. I mean, he suffered losing both his parents and his wife, and God knows what else in his life. And you'd never know like how he does it. I'm going to admit this one time, Dad. I'm full of admiration for him for how he copes with things. But then you get people like me that just, you know, can't. It's not a choice. I don't choose to not cope with what's happened, but I didn't. And to be honest, I still don't sometimes. But there are other people like that, and we can help each other because it's that understanding of not understanding that brings us together. And then Ephraim's very good for me because he points out to me quite a lot. Look how far you've come. You know, you sit there and you say, you haven't coped, you're not coping, you haven't done this isn't working, that isn't. You're here, you've built a business, you're helping other people, you're smiling, you're putting out content, you're like, look how far you've come. And he's right in that. And then I think, well, hang on, I'm lucky, I've got him pointing that out. So who's out there that needs me to point that out? What a unique position to be in terms of what I do for a living, to be able to do that. Because a personal trainer is essentially an unqualified, untrained, shouldn't do it counsellor, because the stuff that people tell you when you're making them cry over exercise is unique. But how nice it is to be able to use my own, in some instances, tragic and dire circumstance and experiences to help someone else overcome theirs. That's kind of what I'm modelling and have modelled and continue to model my business on, because I call it my business, but it's more than that. I have to make money from it to be able to do it, but I don't see an end to it, I suppose is the way to explain it. I don't sit here and go, oh, I'm going to do this in year 1 and year 2 and year 3, and then by year 10 I'll be doing this, and then by year 16 now, it'll be around then, I'll be retiring, and that's me and that's my lot, and I'm going to go and enjoy the fruits of my wealth. I sit here and I go, right, how can I make this last? Like, what's the longevity in my plan? How do I continue this journey until my end? Because that's when it stops. It doesn't, for me, it's not going to stop at 65, 68, 72, whatever the age is now, because they change it every 6 weeks. It ends when I end, because I might not be able to throw stupid weights around when I'm 75, and I might not be able to do burpees at the rate that I do them right now. But I can still talk to people. I can still engage with people. I can still share with people, and I'm not going to lose the knowledge and experience and things that I've gained. So why would I stop sharing that with people? I just have to continue to realign and grow and reshape what I do. And that's kind of become the key thing for me. It's trying to remember that everything is tangible. Nothing has to be, it doesn't have to be solidified, but it doesn't. Like, my ethos, my drive, my purpose needs to be quite solid and have solid foundations and things. But the product of that doesn't have to be solid. It can be like putty. I can shape it into whatever I want. It can fit whatever shaped hole it needs to. And that's kind of where I'm at with it all. It's trying to mold things to other people so that my, what I can offer fits everybody. And that's a nice place to get to in terms of what I'm saying, because if we look at face value as at my title, I am the Wolfman, personal trainer. There are two parts to that. And I think the majority of people focus on the latter part, which is trainer. What is a trainer? In the fitness industry, it is someone who shows you and modifies exercises and makes you do them. We all know that. We all expect that from a personal trainer. But the bit that gets lost is that first bit. It's personal. Every PT under the sun will tell you that they will create you a bespoke plan. But when you're giving people the same generic 25 exercises in the same upper lower split or body part split over a 6-week period, that's not bespoke. That's, you've changed a couple of exercises and told someone it's bespoke. Bespoke is understanding the person you're working with and offering them what they need. I know that from my point of view in terms of fitness, do I look how I want to look? Not really. Do I lift what I want to lift? No. Can I move as quickly as I want to move? No. Because when it comes to our limitations physically, none of us are ever satisfied. We always want more. It's a fallacy to sit here and say to someone in my industry, oh, I will get you to your goal. Because if we're honest, everyone's goal moves all the time. Like, we never set a set of goalposts and stick to it. We move them all the time. So it's not, to be a personal trainer, it's not about achieving someone's set goal. It's about moving with them every time the goal changes and working towards something. And you can only do that if you understand the person, if you're willing to engage with them on a level that is beyond do 15 burpees. It's become a unique medium and vehicle for me to get that level of engagement with people. And that's what I thrive off. That's what, it goes back to how I started this meandering preamble probably 35 minutes ago, when I said I learned at 16, it was engaging with people that drove me. Well, here I am 20 years later, it's the same thing. But the great thing about that is, like I said, there's no end goal to that, because there is no peak. There is no pinnacle of that as a career path. You can't get to the top. It doesn't exist, because there will always be more people to engage with, and it will always be different engagement. So you just keep going. And if you remove the desire to hit a peak, then the pressure's off as well. So it becomes natural and free flowing. And what a nice way to live. Just got to pay your bills, but what a nice way to live. There's my introduction.
Wow, is all I can say. I don't think I got hardly a single word in there. And normally,
two words.
two words. Normally we have a conversation, but do you know what? You've kind of answered everything that I was going to be asking you about. I mean, the whole journey, the whole ethos about finding your purpose and the various stages. And I think that was really key for me, listening to that whole idea that you find your purpose, but then it changes, or you lose your purpose again, but then you gain it again, and you're constantly changing and adapting. And I think that's a key message that a lot of people, as you say, set these goals and they, right, I'm going to aim for this, I'm going to aim for this. But things in your life change. You adapt, you move, you meander, choosing a word that you used. You know, those things change. And I think that adaptability is probably part of your purpose or part of your strength as a personal coach. And I think that's just blown me away. It's just been absolutely brilliant listening to you.
You didn't fall asleep. That's the important
thing. No,
thing.
because I didn't fall asleep because it was fascinating. And there was a lot of things in there that resonated with me. You know, your connection with StrongMen, especially, you know, from my own backstory. You know, I worked very hard to support the StrongMen ideal. And we're certainly on the same page when it comes to that. And, you know, StrongMen for me was my massive reset button.
Yeah.
Probably about the same sort of time. It was April last year. So that was the reset button that I needed to find or to reaffirm my purpose. I think that's probably the right word, is that I kind of lost my way, but I just needed that little, and again, paraphrasing yourself, you know, I was on the tracks, but I needed that engine to be sort of, you know, to be refueled, if you like. And I think that was really
good. It'd be nice for StrongMen as an organization or as a charity. I see them now as my compass. They don't stop me from becoming lost, because no one can stop me from becoming lost.
No.
But if I get lost, they're there. And if I remember to use them, if I remember to get the compass out, I know that it will help me find my path again. They'll get me back on the right direction.
Definitely.
It's not that it will get me home. I have to get me home, but they will get me back on the path to getting home.
And I see it the same way. That's so good. And I'm sure StrongMen and, you know, all the guys are going to really appreciate all your comments on this little podcast, because I certainly do.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been so fascinating. I mean, I was going to ask you, what's your future? What's your plans for your business? And you kind of already answered that. Is there this continued support of the community? And I love the fact that you're doing the volunteering as well.
It all kind of, like I say, it's like a melting pot of pathways and options. I mean, the ideal for me, and I'm not there yet, but the ideal for me from a very sort of focused business point of view would be beyond our current global pandemic situation. You know, I'd like to find the funding to open a studio and then have a base that's mine, you know, and then I've been writing a business plan for the last 3 months on this, and it's about creating what I'm referring to as a safe space. On the face of it, it would be a fitness studio, because again, you know, being a grown up, which I hate to be sometimes, I have to generate an income. But beyond that, I see it as being this safe space where if you make an appointment to come and see me, but you're not in a position to train and you really don't want to, you can come and sit and have a coffee and pick up a book. And like in my head, this wouldn't be your average fitness studio. It would have bean bags in a corner. I mean, I'd be drawing on all of my experiences from education and from everything I've done. And then, like with the volunteer work, it would be a case of like, I actually have signed up to, I haven't, because of COVID-19, we haven't been able to do this, but I actually signed up just before this happened to a system called time banking, which I'll quickly share with you, because if anyone here listening to this likes this concept, they should definitely get involved with it if you've got a local time bank. So essentially a time bank is you volunteer and your hours that you volunteer for get logged. That gets put in the bank. And then you're in this situation where if you need assistance with something and someone else has put in the bank that they can assist in that area, you can then have their assistance for an hour. And every hour is of equal value. So it doesn't matter if you are offering to walk a dog or paint someone's house or build a porch, an hour is an hour, no matter what you do. And you can trade hours. And then if you're in the unique position, which is what I would hope to be, where I can offer hours to the community. So I would like to be able to offer, if I had this space, use of the space for time. The idea would be to bank those hours back, but then to gift them back to other people who actually need it, as opposed to using them myself, because hopefully I'd be in a position where I don't need to use them. And then the final stage on this sort of plan is that, again, going full circle and utilizing all of my experiences, I would really like to essentially take on apprentices. I would like, that's why I want a studio. It's not because I just want my own playroom. It's because I want to be able to take on like-minded individuals who would like to get into this industry and would benefit from a different perspective. Because the one thing, and I've avoided it up until this point, the fitness industry is not my friend. Like I do it, and I do it differently because I believe in what I'm doing. The fitness industry, as we see it on social media, as we see it in the public eye, I really strongly disagree with. It really sits badly with me, the way that it's like the sausage factory analogy, the way we are just pumping out these like-minded individuals that you can make millions by telling people that this, go back to that term, bespoke plan will make the difference. That it won't. That won't. You have to re-educate people and realign their way of thinking for it to make a difference. And you can only do that with people that are willing. And people will only be willing if they believe, and they will only believe if you're honest and you show them. Getting people to do the same generic exercise plan over and over again. And don't get me wrong, I'm not being naive here. There are ways of making people see a difference. But if you want to make that difference long lasting and an investment in yourself, then you have to understand the how and the why. And not sharing the how and the why is wrong. I want to basically produce my own sausage factory with 100% pork as opposed to 12% pork, and get, and just see where we can go with this. Because linking everything together, we all know now, it's very much discussed and put out there that physical activity is good for every single aspect of your well-being, your social, your mental, and your physical. It encompasses everything. If you're working in the industry, you need to be able to look at all of those things. To be able to refer to yourself as a coach or a trainer, you have to understand and encompass all of those things. Otherwise, what are you really doing? You're just regurgitating the same nonsense. I mean, it's not nonsense. Obviously, there is fact, but if you're paying for a service, you deserve the best service you can get. And it's no different from any other like manual labor, hands-on work. If I paid someone to fit a kitchen, I want that kitchen to look perfect, to feel perfect, to last. So if that same person is paying me for training, then they need to know that they're getting what they're paying for. It all comes together just from lots of different angles. Yeah, it makes for a very complicated business model.
Well, it's you're looking at it from the whole rather than that section. So I always think of an analogy of being a pie. Lots of slices of pies that people will focus on and concentrate on. You get, as you say, a lot of the industry that you're in concentrates on this particular slice of the pie, whereas you're looking at it from the whole view. This is not just about helping you do so many burpees in 60 seconds. This is about your mindset, your whole attitude to life and purpose and what you want to do with yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to focus on fitness, but that encompasses all of it. And that's what I really like about you. And I think that's why you've really resonated with me, and also with the work that you do in the charity, and obviously the connection with StrongMen too.
We haven't said it directly in this can we call it a conversation, or is it
a conversation? Is normally two-way, but
yeah. I mean, is this, I'm trying to think what that word is now, from is this just me giving like a monologue?
Yeah.
But it's cathartic. That's the thing. It's
that's
like,
the word,
I think anyone that's experienced the things that we've experienced and gone through the journey that, like you say, with StrongMen, that it's not that we're going through a unique journey that no one else has experienced, but we're experiencing it in a unique way, I think, is what it
Brilliant.
is. It is a cathartic process, talking to each other, working with each other, connecting with each other, because the second you feel less alone about it all, but it normalizes the situation. And the second you normalize it, it's a bit easier to process and a bit easier to cope with. Even though it's all exactly the same and nothing has changed, sharing that experience and knowing that other people have had the same thoughts, been in the same dark places, struggled in the same way or similar ways, and not understood it's normalizing that lack of understanding. It's suddenly a lot less scary and more manageable. And that's what StrongMen has certainly allowed me to do. But from talking to other people like yourself who are involved with them and have become involved with them, we seem to all find sort of solace and strength in like you said, it's like the family that it builds. It's a very worthwhile and meaningful charity and organization. It's one that obviously we all want to help grow.
But also for yourself, because you're that same alignment, that same purpose is part of you and your brand and your business as well. So
yeah, very much
we've talked a lot about StrongMen, and that's why there is that connection, because you're building your business around the same values, the same purpose, and the same ethos, if you like, as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of there is a lot of overlap. I think we're all fairly like-minded and similar people. Yeah, we obviously have our differences, but yeah, I guess it is the ethos, isn't it? Is very much something we all share.
Definitely,
which is nice. I mean, that's humanity, isn't it? It's making connections with like-minded individuals. That's what leads to healthy relationships. So
from a business perspective, that's what differentiates someone from, that sea of personal trainers. It's that connection is what people are going to buy into. And I don't mean that buy in from a financial perspective, but buy into that connection, buy into what you stand for and your purpose and what you believe in. Because that's what people connect on.
It's absolutely true, and it's very easy to see with my own client base, because I'm not going to sit here and allude to it being a mahoosive client base, because it isn't. But once I have a client, I don't lose them at all. Like, I mean, even through this current situation, we've not been able to train. And I'm not gonna lie and say all my clients have gone on to Zoom train. Most of them haven't, because they don't believe in it, and that's fine. It's understanding that if they don't believe in it, why I can't force them to do it. But we've stayed in contact. We've messaged, shared ideas. The stuff that I put out for StrongMen is obviously also similar to the stuff that I put out for my clients. So the engagement's still been there. It's just been a different relationship.
In a sense, that's why we're doing this, because hopefully lots of people will see this, lots of people will hear this, and they can see what you're about, and we can share this, and it's about connections and storytelling. And I think you can certainly tell a story. If there was one thing that you could share with anybody now, I think you've probably already covered it, but just a very quick summary. What would be your biggest tip at the moment? In the world at the moment, lots of people are struggling. Lots of people are not able to get out and about. What's the Wolfman top tip of the day? What would you say it would be?
I think it's kind of an obvious one, but it's definitely something that resonates with me. It's reach out. If you're sat there and you think, oh, I really should speak to XYZ, do it. Don't hesitate. Don't give yourself the reason or the excuse not to, or they might be busy, or they might not. Just reach out, because I think we're all in that position where we've had a lot of time to ourselves now. We've probably all sat and overthought reaching out. Just do it. Like, what have you got to lose? Worst case scenario, the person you reach out to doesn't respond. And do you know what? If they don't respond, reach out to someone else. There will be people that will really, really appreciate it, and it can make a huge difference to, God knows, their day, their week, their month, who knows? It's just worth doing. You might reach out to someone to offer them help, and they may end up helping you. So
we're going to sort of wrap it up a little bit now, but I know that you've mentioned your dad. Is there anyone else that you'd like to say thank you to? Or anybody that's been a massive part of where you are right this moment?
Yeah, it wouldn't be fair if I didn't. So there is a lovely lady in my life who's been around for the last sort of nearly 2 years now. We have our differences, and we wouldn't be human without our problems. But from the point of view of Wolfman fitness and things, it possibly wouldn't exist as it does without her. She has kept me on my toes and very much driven me to this sort of point, like, and when I need a bit of a stern talking to or a bit of a reminder or whatever, she's more than happy to oblige. So yeah, she'll appreciate that.
Glad to hear it. And also just, as I said, I think we could probably go on for another hour or two today, but we've all got things to get on with, and I'm definitely going to get you back, in a while, in 6 months' time, to see how you are. But how can people find you? How can people get in contact with you? Where's the best place to reach out to the Wolfman?
Such a good question, that one. I'm glad you asked it. I do have a website, and it has been a love affair of mine. I've completely built it myself, and I still do on a frequent basis play with it. So that is literally www.wolfmanfitness.co.uk. There are a million options of how to contact me on there. There is a chat box, there is the email, there is the contact me box. And I think there's probably also my phone number on there everywhere. Literally, my WhatsApp is an open inbox. If you get my number off the website, feel free to message me. Everything's driven from the website. Once you're on there, you can find everything else.
No, that's great. It's glad to hear. I'm glad you've enjoyed the experience. I've certainly enjoyed it. And it's been absolutely fascinating. And yes, you can talk a lot, but it resonated. There was a lot of stuff in there, a lot of really good takeaways that I think a lot of people can actually, if they listen back to this, there's so many different things that can be taken from it, and sharing your story will hopefully help other people as well. And certainly I've been fascinated by it, and I think that it's been really, really enjoyable for me. So before we sort of wrap it up, is there any final words from the Wolfman today? Anything you want to say?
You yourself said this. I'm going to give you some credit. You put it on one of your posts from me. You said every journey of 1,000 steps or 1,000 miles starts with a first step, and it does. In terms of health and fitness and well-being and exercise, it couldn't be truer. And I think if people stop fixating on what they want to look like at the end, or if they can or can't, or what someone else looks like, and they just enjoy the process and the journey, that becomes the goal, like the process and the journey. If you want to, if anyone has been so inspired, I was going to say, that makes me sound like I'm being really pompous. If anybody from this has gone back and gone, they keep talking about burpees, what's this? And they go and watch that silly video, the only reason that I can do that number of burpees in 60 seconds, we won't give a spoiler, they have to go and watch it, is because in a very sick, perverse way, I enjoy burpees. But not because I enjoy burpees. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. I've learnt to enjoy burpees. I'm the same as everyone else. Burpees are the worst exercise in the world. They are the devil of exercise. But by enjoying the process, by taking those first steps, by sticking with it, and when I haven't wanted to do it, doing it anyway, I get to a point where I set a silly challenge like that one, and actually I really enjoyed doing it. I got a real sense of satisfaction out of it. And it doesn't matter whether you do 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever. If you're doing 5 today, but 2 weeks ago you did 4, well, there's your progress. There's your reason for doing it. There's your journey. It's personal to you. And we set the challenges, and we encourage people to be competitive, but it's not really about competing with each other. It's about competing with yourself. And again, particularly in this industry, if more people realize that, the better it would be. I don't care if there are people my age that have got 32-inch biceps and a 12-pack in their stomach, because I'm not competing with them. I don't want to do what they've done to look like that or get like that. I'm competing with me. If I can do one more burpee next week than I did this week, then I've progressed and I've improved and I've achieved something. And that's kind of, I've made that a very long-winded sort of answer, but that's kind of the Wolfman mantra, if you like. The Wolfman message is, it's a wonderful thing what we're able to do physically, and regardless of your situation, I'm a strong believer that there are very few people out there who can't do something. I'm not going to be as blunt as saying everybody, because I appreciate there are some very severe circumstances, but generally speaking, everybody can do something. And if there's something you try today doesn't succeed, try it again tomorrow. And at some point it will work, you will succeed, and then look what you've achieved. Doesn't matter what it is compared to everyone else. It's what it is compared to what you could do. And it's learning that lesson in fitness that has allowed me to at least try to apply it in life. And it's that sort of lesson that dug me out of the hole that I got myself into. Like, you know, if we want to end this like by bringing it all together, that's very much it. You know, if I hadn't learned that lesson, I did learn it through fitness. If I didn't learn that lesson through fitness and exercise, I wouldn't have been able to apply it in life, and I wouldn't have been able to take those baby steps away from the darkness, if we call it, and get myself to better places. And it's not over. We can suffer setbacks. I will end with this amazing quote that I'm going to share because it gives you a little bit more of an insight into my mentality sometimes. It's from Batman. Bruce, why do we fall over? And the young Bruce Wayne looks at me and goes, so we can learn to get back up again. I think, you know, yes, it's from Batman, but it has so much meaning because we will all fall over, not just once. We will all fall over many, many times. But as long as we get back up again, it doesn't matter. It just is what it is. It's just part of life.
I'm blown away, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think this is probably one of my longest podcasts I've ever done.
All right.
No, please don't apologize because it's got so much value in there, and I can't wait to get this one out there and share it because I think so many people will find value from it and connect as well. Because I think it's just been really, really fantastic. So finally, thanks ever so much for giving up your time. I know you're
having me.
I know you're busy, and I know things are starting to pick up again because of the virus and stuff. So I really do appreciate your time, and I will book you in. I'm going to get you back in 6 months' time and see how this has progressed. I want to know what happens next because it's been fascinating. So thanks again, mate. It's been
whatever it is, it'll be something, and that's the thing, isn't it? It might not be what I've said I want it to be, but it'll be something.
Yeah, and I think either way, it's going to be fascinating. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. So
it's been brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks ever so much. Thank you.